a group working discussion. And so as part of this, as this part of the program, we will be considering the question, what key principles and actions are needed as solutions to strengthen and defend liberal democracy amid growing global challenges and the rise of artificial intelligence? So the way this is going to work is you will have to choose a representative amongst yourselves. Somebody is going to be presenting what we talk about here in the next part of the program. So we need somebody who's outgoing and feels like they can summarize what we talk about. I'm going to give you a second to think about that while I say that. In the meantime, the way that we will have our working discussion is if you can just raise your hand, I will bring you a microphone and you can tell us what you think based on the papers that we just heard presented. And I have two, so I'll be trying to run between, have one person speaking and get a microphone to the next person. Can we get a volunteer who's willing to summarize and present the discussion in the next session? Perfect, thank you. I'm trying not to look at the one person who I work with. So thank you so much. So this is a time for open discussion of the papers we just heard. You can also, I think that we have three of the authors here with us, so I think it's okay also to ask questions. But we're just trying to come to take advantage of the number of brains we have in the room. And so I am ready to bring a microphone to whoever has something to say.
Thank you, Janet. I'm Ramazpur from Afghanistan. I'm interested to the points that was raised by our speaker from Uyghur community regarding those structures and mechanisms, global mechanisms that should support democracy and liberty in the world, like a Human Rights Council, for instance. I'm sure you all know about the situation in Afghanistan. After the 15 August 2021, the Taliban take over the power and they banned totally the women from the society. All sort of activities for women and girls are banned in Afghanistan. Education, access to higher education, and also other civil and political freedoms. At the same time, there are a lot of restrictions on all communities, including the civic space. There is totally closed civic space in Afghanistan right now. I did a research 2 years ago about civic space. That's not exist anymore in the country. We had a lot of achievements during the Republic, 20 years, as Mr. WAEN mentioned. It is really a big tragedy because we had 20 years of democratic system. Indeed, there was corruption, there was nepotism, there was other sort of problems in the society, divided society ethnically, religiously, but anyway, we had a system by the name of democracy. We had election, people were participating, people were eager to participate in democratic mechanism like election in parliamentary system and others. But anyway, after the collapse, Afghan diaspora, including men, women, youths, and other civil society activists, human rights defenders, they separated in different parts of the world, in Europe, in the US, in Canada. And we are very grateful to Canadian government. They supported very generously Afghan communities here. And we are very grateful to the political stand of Canadian government. Canada recognizes the Taliban as a terrorist movement, and it still insists on this position. Not like other countries, Western countries, particularly some European states. They're gradually recognizing the Taliban regime somehow, and they are accepting their diplomats right now. Started by some countries in Europe, they started by neighboring countries in Afghanistan, and now expanding through all that. Somehow, the country, German state recognized, the Netherlands somehow, the Afghan embassy did with the Taliban. Turkey accepted ambassadors of Taliban, Iran, and neighboring countries earlier. Anyway, regarding these kind of mechanisms, OHCHR, Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, Human Rights Council, they have to support human dignity, they have to support human rights treaties. Unfortunately, after the collapse, large group of Afghan diaspora civil society activists, they started advocating for establishment of an independent mechanism, an independent investigation mechanism for Afghanistan's human rights violations. After 4 years advocacy, a lot of struggle and things, finally, just this August, the Human Rights Council approved establishment of an independent investigation mechanism for massive war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide in Afghanistan. Let's see, this is just the starting points. It means these mechanisms are acting very slowly towards something that needs urgency, because this is not the issue of small community. This is the case of more than 20 million of population of Afghanistan who are women. They are suffering, but these mechanisms are acting very slow. In terms of the collapse of Republic as a big tragedy, there was actually internal factors, like, as I mentioned, corruption, nepotism, division of different ethnic groups, supremacy of some particular ethnic group in power, etc. But there was also external elements, like those countries, those authoritarian or totalitarian regimes surrounding Afghanistan, starting from China, Russia, Iran, and also supporting of those terrorist and radical Islamist groups in the region, caused for the collapse of Republic. The cover of power by Taliban inspired all terrorist and radical groups in the world, from Syria, from Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, to Nigeria, to Burkina Faso, to Sudan, to Egypt. All radical groups welcomed the establishment of Islamic Emirate in Afghanistan, which is not a good news. Maybe some countries just ignoring, okay, these are small groups welcoming Taliban, but what would be the aftermath of welcoming and inspiration of these kind of groups in future? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Janet, with your permission, I just want to make sure that we are on the right page for this group discussion. Friends, what we really want from you in this part is that if you see the agenda on Group A, which is written in green color, we have a specific question from all of you. And the question is that what key principles and actions are needed as solutions to strengthen and defend liberal democracy aimed at growing global challenges and the rise of artificial intelligence? So this is the main question. Based on this question, each of you have only 2 minutes, at least 3 minutes, to answer only this question. And then Tyler is the speak person of our group. He is going to write what you are saying, and he is going to conclude all those points, and he is going to share all those things at the end, along with the other groups who are also joining with us in here at the end of this session. So thank you so much. I'm sure that now it's very clear.
Yeah, so for me at least, just looking at the question specifically, I think the big challenge in regards to AI for me is the making sure that the primacy and the ideas of the individual, opposed to say just the collective algorithm, I think is a real challenge. Opposing groupthink, I think, is a additional challenge that we all have to meet. Now, how we meet that, I'm not really sure, but I'd like to maybe hear from you guys, if you guys have any ideas on that. Or maybe I'm wrong in my threat analysis or something, but...
The problem that I saw with the AI, there is so much information available in social media. So much of the information is manipulated, and when, in this case with Venezuela, when you ask sometimes to depend on the owner of the source of AI, you can get more or less accurate the answer from the AI. There is so many organizations and countries that they fill the whole media and internet with fake information. And it's very, very hard, if you don't have some kind of knowledge about that, not believe what they say or what show up. More dangerous is for young generation.
I think I have a different perspective because for example, in China, the communist government manipulate AI. If I had a friend on June 3rd this year asked AI, what's tomorrow? And AI said, this day doesn't exist. So they can even take a day out of a calendar. But when I was in Syria, and the Syrian people told me, if you search what's June 4th, 1989 in Arabic, you get very detailed, very unbiased documents. And they said in Syria, they get that and they translate it into Chinese and resend it to China. So I think AI is very good in that a lot of times, because the dictators, they don't have that much manpower and energy and talent to block and alter everything, because the technology is awesome, is fast, and is wide and without border. So I think we should embrace that and utilize that for our advantage.
I was going to say something similar, actually. My perspective is that AI is sort of a neutral. It's not a good or a bad. And do authoritarian regimes use it to amplify their transnational repression? Absolutely. Can we also use it to our advantage? Yes, definitely. For example, human rights defenders without a legal background could potentially use AI to draft a sanctions submission or communication to a special rapporteur. Now, I'd always suggest you check the AI's work because they tend to hallucinate case law sometimes. But my point is that AI can be leveraged. And then from the other side, authoritarians' use of AI to amplify their own efforts should not be looked at in isolation, because really this is just an amplification of existing mis and disinformation efforts that we need to combat in any event.
Yeah, and okay, finished? Okay, just let me continue from the space AI. The previously before AI era, there's a propaganda from Chinese government or other hostile governments using our own platform. And the Canadian CRTC allowed Chinese official media or propaganda mouth of the Communist Party openly spread their propaganda. And now AI is spreading, and it became almost a household consumption subject. Everyone is using it. Again, the Chinese creating alternative AI with their own narrative, right? And they are not open for other reality. They only spreading their own propaganda. In that case, just previously when CRTC allowed the Chinese propaganda machine, at the same time when Chinese government refused the Canadian CBC to broadcast in China, and we asked them just to pass a clear legislation to balance the situation. And now all Western governments should pass a certain level of legislation, or just keep it open, or just address the authoritarian regime's alternative narrative. Otherwise, it will continue as is. And we keep our society open and the communication open, authoritarian regime keeps everything closed, and they live in their virtual reality without knowing anything. And so I think it could be an international convention or treaty body or whatever it is, or domestic laws. We have to have a certain level of legislative mechanism just to not only promote our AI, independent AI, at the same time to push the authoritarian regime just to open up their own society. Thank you.
So yeah, I think one of the big issues that AI presents is not necessarily what's being output by AI, but what data is being input to AI and where it goes on the back end. There's an opportunity there for a lot of risky data harvesting by bad actors. That could be used to further oppress at-risk groups who are using AI to, say, generate communications or whatever. A lot of these AI models that are in use are somewhat ambiguous on where the input information goes, how it's utilized, and what third parties utilize that information to generate output. So I think there's there's a major risk there for data harvesting, as I was saying previously, and there needs to be greater mandated disclosure on where this data is being fed into. If we're going to permit AI to operate in liberal democracies where we take disclosure for granted.
My first observation about AI is it's not static. It's changing rapidly. So almost anything we say here today is going to be supplanted, and where it's going to go is a guess. I suspect, though, that if you look at the question and take it back, what is the point of communication in the first place? It has many functions, but one is to persuade people to change how they view and how they think about something. And where the danger with AI is if you pose it a question, it will come back with all this information, some of it not particularly well thought out, but I suspect that's going to change. I think the quality of it will improve rapidly, but it'll improve rapidly, but also your own suspicion. So I will create an AI to look at outside AI, and basically you just get an echo chamber. And it could end up not changing people's minds or informing them as to a better recommendation. You will just instruct your AI to pick out the other person's AI that reinforces your own view. I mean, why admit you're wrong?
What I meant at the beginning is AI, it can be a tool, but cannot replace critical thinking and cannot replace your capacity of research about what you are getting from AI. For example, I was working in a letter and I request to Grok a biography about a friend and give me an information from someone who is not her. Said that the AI gave me that she is a specialist about the Aragua train and international criminal groups, and she never in her life worked with that. And just because she posts some stuff in Twitter, give that input in the AI. If I have the opportunity to verify the information with her and she said, no, that is not mine, you will share information that is not accurate and is not real. What I said with the AI, don't depend on that. Use your critical thinking and get another sources to research. Because before, when you have to write a document, you'd have to take a book or go to the website and get the information to start from scratch. Is that so?
So I want to channel a good friend of the mission of what we're doing here today, Dr. Tom Palmer, and something he has said about AI that I think is really good, and is also echoed in the paper on social media. The sun is very bright. Is that AI is being used very effectively by some people in the world right now to resist authoritarianism. Ukraine is the big example, right? And so there are people to learn from. And I know from reading the paper that Pakistan is another example. There are people there who are, the government is using AI to try and figure out who people are despite their attempts at anonymity, and activists are working using AI to try and outdo that. It reminds me of the quest for encryption. So constantly people are trying to break encryption and other people are trying to make the encryption stronger. This is a public process. I don't know if we can learn about that from AI, because we are rapidly reaching the limits of my understanding of AI. The only other thing I would say is that we should not confuse AI and LLMs. An LLM is a large language model like ChatGPT. That is one type of AI. There are other types that do things like figure out where mines are in a field so that you can do demining. That's a very different type of tool, and we shouldn't limit ourselves to that. However, now I need one of you to speak, because I'm not exempting myself from the 3-minute limit.
I think one example we can think of is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not official, but it's grassroots crowdfunded, and it had a glorious time. Everybody was using it, but right now it's heavily manipulated, and people walk away from it. You don't need to have a campaign for it. People know, and most people walk away from it. Nobody really take Wikipedia seriously anymore. Oh, by the way, wiki is Hawaiian words, means fast. They borrowed.
I think Israel's use of AI is also another example that I think is worth looking at. Their Lavender software is used to select and approve targets for drone strikes, and I think it creates interesting questions for who is then held accountable for selecting these targets and approving these targets. Is it the software engineer, the administrators who approved the use of the AI? Because when you start to remove human actors from the consequences of actions, it creates complex problems for justice. And then I think also seeing AI models like Grok on X being censored to avoid like anti-Israeli content and things like that, I think are important examples of the ways that AI are used in support of authoritarianism.
So yeah, sorry about that. A valid attempt was made there. I was reading about this the other day, and it sort of piqued my interest. I was talking about like a self-perpetuating vicious cycle of AI, and it's the ability of AI now to source content generated by AI is leading to, someone earlier brought up, I think it might have been Sarah, brought up that, cited legal cases that don't exist. Well, it's getting to the point now that AI is pulling, false data that it itself generated. So, it's becoming more and more inaccurate in some regards. And I think the issue now when we're getting into, extremism or whatever is we're perpetuating and, boosting false narratives generated, in the first instance by AI. It's, again, it's a vicious cycle, right? So we're not necessarily even using accurate information. We're taking, false narratives that have been generated or compiled from, extremist propaganda by AI, and now we don't even have the original source material. We have, AI extremism, right? So we're getting to, again, disclosure, right? And where is it pulling from?
Going to that really good point, it's like with AI, you give it an inch and it goes a mile. When we're talking about like the left and right sort of praxis in terms of like politics, for example, like if you're on the left and you search up something on AI, it's rapid, it's changing, and it's adaptable. And that way it becomes this ideological enclave where you're actively seeking a source, but it will by then make you an extremist because it gives you A, B, C, and D. That's not necessarily relevant, nor may it be real, but it sort of centers around what you think and adapts to the way that you're thinking. Like we see social media and those social media enclaves with people are like, well, I know this is a fact because I got it off TikTok. I know this is a fact because I got it off Instagram. It's the same thing with AI. It's ever changing, and it's based on what you think. Like I can get rid of all the tabs in AI. It still knows my name. It knows what I do. It knows what university I go to. And that's the scary thing about it. It learns so much about you that it will orient you just naturally, based on the way, because it's not trustworthy and doesn't have all the correct information. It will naturally orient you towards extremist views. And we don't only see this within universities and kids becoming extremely onto one side or another, and this really goes back to polarization, but even in just regular workplaces as well.
Yeah, building off of those 2 points, I completely agree. And I think this is, going back to, again, my earlier point about AI just being an amplifier of things that are already happening. When it comes to mis and disinformation, I think building up our own capacity as societies to get to the root of information and try to cut away that noise is really important. So whether you're using ChatGPT, and asking for the source links, which I do and everyone should, or if you're looking at something on Twitter or TikTok or whatever it may be, really trying to dig into what the source material is. And by the way, that's not just for like a newspaper articles or something, like even with UN reports, like the latest UN Commission of Inquiry report on Palestine, for example. Dig into the footnotes. For any report, always dig into the footnotes, right? Be independent thinkers. I think that's really important, and that's something that we're losing as a society, and it's important to continue to do that because no author is immune from making mistakes, and it may not be malicious. For example, a UN report could cite a news article that was then retracted or changed, and they just did not update it. So I think getting to that and really evaluating what information we're using is really, really important.
I think like in this day and age, you can't really resist AI. Like it's everywhere in our fields, we see it. It's used all the time, and it's actually enhances our capacity to like analyze data. We can have access and analyze to a lot more data than any one human can in the same period of time. But I mean, the issue of like what we are talking about becoming more extremist or confirmation bias is not specific to AI. It was there from the time that any sort of media, even before internet came, people follow the news that they want to follow. They go search, for example, if we think Trudeau is a bad prime minister, we go search why Trudeau is a bad prime minister. We don't search, is Trudeau a bad prime minister? Or if we think Doug Ford is bad or healthcare funding shouldn't be cut, we go say, why healthcare funding shouldn't be cut? How important it is to have funding for public healthcare? And then we become more and more extremist in our own kind of views, and that's not specific to AI, and all of us are prone to it. People who are on the far right would always follow Fox News, and people who are on the far left would always follow their own bloggers and their own media. So there's like, as human beings, I think we are just not that open to discussion for the sake of like learning from one another, but we just sit there and argue to prove our own point, and then we have this tendency to become more extremist. So I think that's what we should try to combat rather than trying to fight AI, which is gonna be there anyways.
I want to respond right back to that because that is such a good point, especially within society. And we have tried to do so many things in schools and workplaces to try and get rid of AI. And the bottom line, it's not going to happen. You know what? People like it. And I think the way forward, at least, people don't know how to use AI correctly. And you know what? It can enhance critical thinking skills, and it's really good for researching. The amount of things we can consume, at least like reading and all stuff like that, we're so much better for it because of AI. And a way to do this would try to be to integrate it within schools. Now, I'm not saying to promote cheating, but I'm saying like make classes on AI. Let's try to introduce policies or different classes or different things that really help someone not to take a first glance and say, this is correct information, I'm gonna use this 100%, but instead like foster those critical thinking skills just by going in and basically saying to everything, okay, let me give this a second glance, let me give this a second glance. Only then will we be able to use AI in a positive way that counters extremism and at the same time just makes us better and smarter humans in general.
I'm going to veer a little bit off course here. I think when talking about AI and liberal democracy and threats, I think one of the things people don't typically think about is the capacity to actually build out the AI infrastructure that's needed and the threats to property rights as a result of that. If you look in the United States, for example, eminent domain is something that is frequently used to property owners when there's a project that needs to be done for national security reasons. And I think a lot of countries are going to start implementing these things because we are effectively in a technological race to the bottom, for lack of a better term, with China and how we are going to implement our AI rollouts. And we have not even remote capacity to build out the AI infrastructure that we need, the way that we need to. We don't have the amount of generators. In fact, the technological build out for even just nuclear generators wouldn't be able to be done until about 2035. And looking at it from a business perspective, you can go into kind of all the round tripping that all these businesses are doing to kind of substantiate their inflated stock prices, but they're gonna have to start taking serious measures to do that. Otherwise, all these companies will be going bust. So I would be wary of the government using things like eminent domain and property right and asset seizure to be able to substantiate the energy requirements to build out AI infrastructure.
I'm going to give you an example. Our friend Patrick Mardini, who was our speaker last night, there is a think tank in Lebanon. They start to use AI to do research on project. Before, they're small think tank. They don't have a lot of researchers, so they can produce about 5 research paper a month to present to the government, to lobby the government for policy change and things like that. But now, with AI, they can do about 15 a day. And their researcher now is reading the AI-generated report to polish it or to change it to make sure all the things are accurate. So they became so effective, and they present to the government. They have been making a lot more changes for good in Lebanon. I was there. I saw it. I was so impressed what they're doing with very limited funding and people, and very effective.
I feel like for students and universities and high schools, AI has gained this such a bad taboo view and experiences that professors and teachers go out of their way to find ways to catch students using AI instead of actually teaching them and implementing AI as a resource, that because we're in 21st century, this is part of our lives and it should be included in a way as part of the curriculum that helps students instead of making them scared of using these resources.
We're going again in terms of AI. Guns don't kill people. The users of the guns kill people. AI is a tool and it's a resource, but depend who use the resource, depend of the prompt that you introduce in the AI. There is AI used to that voice recognition that is used to scam people in phone calls. In terms of a human rights defender, there is now AI used to fake videos, uses as a proof to put people in jail. That is the thing. It's not the AI is not the problem. It's who is behind using the resource. And in terms of students, if you use AI or those resources and you don't learn from the beginning how to write something, how to make an essay and the language and everything, you are cheating and you forget the basics to know to do something. You are released your own independence and the capacity of learn something that an automatic tool, but if you get the knowledge, you can use that as a resource and not like the resource is going to manipulate you. It's just what I want to be very clear about AI.
I'm going to just draw a couple of points I've seen together, and then I'll hand it to you. One, we were talking a little bit about how there will always be an excuse for not believing in something if people don't want to believe in it, and talking about the fact that this is a tool that people have to use now, and talking about whether or not we have to worry about the users or the consumers. I just wanted to bring up one of the consumer groups of AI are people now who they're not using it as an excuse to not believe things, but its effect on them because they're not literate, is that they don't know what they can believe, especially with older, less technologically literate people, I love my dad. He is really having a hard time with the videos, the fact that people can make these videos, and he's very, very frustrated. He is starting to feel like he doesn't know what he can believe. That is going to affect his media consumption, his news consumption, his ability to listen to anybody really, and it will affect our ability to raise awareness of what's really happening. Please, go ahead.
Adding to the points that Ms. Alisa mentioned, I just wanted to say that, first of all, there's a very important question, is that, which is, who is controlling AI? It's helping us to know where is all information coming from, and who are we in this platform. And considering the relationship between like AI and democracy, we all know that AI is playing a huge role in mass surveillance, which is against democracy. We should always consider this. This surveillance is happening through different ways. Every single word that we're typing in search bar is being collected by big corporates, and eventually it goes to government, and they will collect the data, and they can use it in their favor. And also, I'm just in case of like some solutions, I would just suggest two possible solutions that I thought about. First, the first one is educating people about how to use AI in the right way and what is AI exactly. And the second one is having a third-party organizations connected to the people who can watch how AI is functioning in the world. Yeah, thank you.
I think maybe building on some of the stuff that Lee shared and what you just shared, Janet, as far as like the use cases, like in Lebanon where LLMs or other AI help teams to produce more and like at a higher rate, hopefully of better quality. And I think that also leads us into the risk of like an inflationary effect for content where there's already so much content out there and things that are being produced. And now it's almost cheapened because it's so much easier to go onto an AI or go onto Grok and say, hey, create this video or this image or this document. And that I wonder if it kind of like increases the importance for our teams or groups that are working in this space to really create more that has the human element or that can really capture our audiences when there's even more competition for their attention. And maybe a solution or something that could be helpful is like leaning into what will hopefully be like a growing distrust of a lot of stuff that's created, and that maybe people will lean into assuming that they can't trust everything at its face value and be a little bit more critical of what they're consuming, kind of like how people used to look at Wikipedia where it was like, you shouldn't really trust the article, but like go to the footnotes, you know, and dig into that itself. So maybe that's like a use case, but I don't know, maybe it's naive that people will like become more hesitant to trust it, but I think that might be like one of our ways out for this challenge.
Always look at the footnotes. Yes, I agree. Speaking of AI and democracy, though, I recently, when I was in New York for a conference, I learned about a potential app. I can't remember if it's in development now or pre that, but it was this concept where if you you swipe on what your views are, and then the app tells you who to vote for. And I thought that was really interesting. And I have very mixed feelings about it. Because on the one hand, maybe it leads to more informed voters, but on the other hand, then it's AI really controlling the outcomes of elections. So I thought that was interesting. I don't have any answers to that beyond just sharing, because yeah, anyway. Another challenge.
I think what we need to be thinking about are well, let me back up for a second. Every new communication technology has disruptive effects. It upends the existing political, legal, social order, and it takes a long time for it to stabilize and perform a positive function in society. I mean, the printing press is an example of that. It upended the Catholic Church, and the norms for responsible use of just the text-based communication took a long time to develop. So So we are in this state where our existing order, the gatekeepers who used to feed us information based on their judgment, all of that is up in the air, it's being upended. And what we've got to do is figure out ways for encouraging norms that are internal to these new technologies and not enforced from outside. So there is a role for government to play in creating regulations that incentivize responsible industry norms without actually mandating what those norms and what those rules should be. And there are various efforts afoot, the Digital Services Act in Europe, which is trying to do that, I think in an imperfect way, in a way that impinges on free speech and the First Amendment. The US is trying to do that as well. One of the issues in the US is that there is a lot of industry input, but not enough from other affected groups. But figuring out a regulatory environment where these norms are generated internally for responsible use is going to be important.
Something that makes me think about is the importance of reputation. And the thing that will come up against reputation will be polarization and loyalty, right? Because if you stick with something because it's on your side, that interferes with our ability to develop useful reputational signaling. Anybody else?
Quick comment. You reminded me at the time printing press just invented, exactly the same kind of discussion was going on. People say, what about the bad people printing bad books? And so it's the same thing. You can't stop it. You just have to do your best to use it in a productive way and create value and changing the world to be better.
Thank you so much. We are, I think, free until 4:15, is that right? Yes, at 4:15, we are all going to be back in here. If you would like to sit with your Group A colleagues, choose a side of the room, because they'll be joining us from the other side. And that will be when Tyler and whoever has been chosen from the other group will come up and present the findings from our group discussions. Thank you all so much for your thoughts. It is so much better to have so many brains and not just my own thinking about a problem.
We're back here.
We're back here at 4:15. Thank you.